Good. We're returning now to what we began yesterday, and that is learning the speech that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who for all practical purposes is the Messiah, he's the Moshiach, he has all the qualifications of Moshiach, and he's doing what Moshiach is supposed to do, namely to educate the Jewish people as to what is a Jew and what is God. And that's what we're learning now. We're learning the teachings of the Mashiach. And not only he alone is the Mashiach, but the Rebbe of every every generation of Chabad is the Mashiach. That's what the Rebbe say. Okay, so whatever you want to say, you can say, but nevertheless, these are the teachings of Mashiach and about Mashiach and to bring Mashiach. So that's what really should be in our mind, that we're waiting for a big surprise that's going to be when Mashiach comes. Just like the Jews got out of Egypt, they never dreamed that it would be such a thing, and nevertheless they did. And it says that the miracles Mashiach is going to do is going to be even greater than going out of Egypt. It'll be more unexpected, a bigger surprise to us than it was to the Jews getting out of Egypt. How this is going to be, I don't know. It's a surprise. But at least this is preparing us. It's getting us at least in the right direction. Right? Somebody knocks at your door. Here's the $10 million that you won in the lottery. I didn't win the lottery. Get out of here. Right? But you did win the lottery. Right? You bought the ticket. Remember? Yeah, but nah. Sorry, I'm not home. Don't come in. God's knocking and wants to come in. You're not expecting it. So this is telling us what to expect. A little bit. What to expect in the future redemption, which is supposed to be not future. It's supposed to be already here. Okay. So what's the Rebbe talking about? The Rebbe talking about over here, first of all, the book of Genesis is in a way the head of the Torah. It's the most important book of the Torah because it defines and determines and empowers and inspires the Jewish people to be Jewish people unconditionally. It says that's the idea of the blessings that Jacob gave to his sons in this week's Torah portion. We're getting these blessings also. And then the Rebbe says, and it's not by accident that this falls in the 10th day of Tevis. Now, by us, it doesn't. The 10th day of Tevis was last week, but still it's relevant to what the Rebbe says. Okay, so what does he say? What happened in the 10th day of Tevis? 10th day of Tevis was the beginning of a whole series of events that brought about the destruction of the first temple, and then from that, the second temple. And so up to then, who would dream that it was possible to destroy a temple? But he did. Nebuchadnezzar came and destroyed the first temple. And why was it that he destroyed the first temple? Because the Jewish people, they started it. And they already opened up the door to trouble. Right? They themselves made the first crack in the walls, of the spiritual walls of the temple. So it says, came along the 10th day of Tevis. 10th day of Tevis was the day that Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem. So the Rebbe said Nebuchadnezzar, he didn't know. I mean, he was a big murderer. But the fact is, he was sending a big message to the Jewish people about how to prevent the destruction of the temple and the scattering of the Jews and all the consequential problems and difficulties and suffering that was to the Jewish people since then, which the first temple was destroyed like 2,500 years ago. So it says, Nebuchadnezzar, he laid siege to Jerusalem, but the language that's used is samach. He's samach, which means that he leaned against the walls of Jerusalem. So the Rebbe said, why does it say he leaned? He laid siege. It says because he didn't really destroy the walls. He didn't even attack the walls. He just surrounded them. And the samach also means to support. So Nebuchadnezzar is sort of telling the Jews that, listen, guys, you're the chosen people. If you don't act like it, that this is what's awaiting you. I'm trying to support you to get you all together in Jerusalem, and I'm surrounding you. I'm trying to force you to act like Jews. I'm supporting Judaism. I'm pushing all together. I'm trying to support Judaism, namely to arouse the Jews to return to God, or tshuva, to do tshuva, to return to God, to return to their true Jewish identity. That's the whole idea. What is a true Jewish identity? That's what we learn about in the blessings that Yaakov gave to his sons. And when the Jews forget this, so comes along a Nebuchadnezzar, and he tries to remind us what is that the 10th day of Tavis. They didn't do anything to Jerusalem. He didn't even do anything to the walls of Jerusalem. He just surrounded them to know, let the Jews know, to define the Jews, to let them know clearly that here you are, you're in Jerusalem, you're in a holy city. You start going outside of the walls of Judaism, I'm waiting for you around the corner, says Nebuchadnezzar. He wanted to arouse the Jews to the tshuva. Okay, but yesh, we'll see if we can add on also in this idea of the 10th day of Tavis. The 10th day of Tavis, when Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem, whether the beginning of the destruction of the temple, or whether the main thing regarding the end of the destruction of the temple, the future redemption and the building of the third temple. Now, again, just so that everybody understands, what's this idea of the temple? Now, even now, when Jews pray, religious Jews, they pray in the direction of the temple. If you happen to live in some country that's the east of the temple, then you face west, face the temple. If you're in a country that's west of the temple, then you face east. Wherever you are, every Jews face the temple. Even though we're teaching that God is everywhere and that God listens to all prayers, no matter where you are. So what are we facing the temple for? Is to show that this physical world is very important to God, and that you have to do things in this physical world exactly the way that God says. And the temple was exactly according to God's specifications. And even more, you went inside of it. You went inside of God's specifications. You were like inside of the Creator's world when you went into the Holy Temple. And as soon as that was destroyed, so the importance of this physical world became confused. And consequentially, what says every moment of this physical world also is filled with confusion and frustration because we don't feel any importance in the world, any true meaning in the world, until the point comes that we say that there's no such thing as meaning. There's just world. That's all there is. In regard to the Matzor that Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem on the 10th day of Tavis, we find in the prophecy of Ezekiel. And you, machavat Barzel. You should take a what is it, like a frying pan of iron, and make it for a kir Barzel, and make it as though it is like a wall of iron. Barzel is iron, between you and between the city of Jerusalem. Matzor, it's a sign that the Jewish people will be in under siege. Now, like we said before, what happened was that Nebuchadnezzar, he conquered Jerusalem, but he didn't destroy the temple. He conquered Jerusalem, and he took the king of Israel, the king of Yehuda. The 10 tribes had already been taken 100 years ago, 150 years earlier. They were taken into exile. They were gone. And he took into exile the king of Israel. The king of Israel was Yechoniah. And Yechezkel went with Yechoniah. He went into Babel. And there he got prophecies. Even though there are no prophecies outside of Israel, but it says that a prophet that receives prophecy before, when he was in Israel, he could continue receiving out. The Gemara asked the question, how could he receive? But nevertheless, he did. He received prophecies, and one of the prophecies was about the 10th day of Tavis. It's Be'etzem Yom Hazeh, and that very day I received this prophecy, and God said, take a big frying pan and put it between you and the city, and this will show that Jerusalem is going to be under siege. OT, this is a sign to the Jewish people that this is what's going to happen to Jerusalem. They're going to be under siege. One minute. What's this? No. I don't know what this is. Okay. Okay, so God tells Ezekiel to take a like a wall off a frying pan, whatever, of iron, Barzel. And that's going to be the sign that Jerusalem is going to be under siege. Why Barzel? What is Barzel? Barzel is iron. Why? Yeshlom, we can say Asiman Sheba Matzor Barzel. By the way, there is no Barzel. It says iron was forbidden in the Holy Temple. Even to make the stones, they didn't hew the stones in the Holy Temple. They would hew them outside with iron, because iron is an instrument used for killing, right? Used for killing. Nowadays, maybe they use laser beams or something, but for thousands of years, the instrument of war was iron.
Right now, the war in Israel is called Swords of Iron, Barzel.
Yeah, okay, good. Iron. Okay.
Very interesting.
Very good. Hopefully, the Rebbe is going to talk about this at great length. We'll see. This is Nirmas. This is hinted at the Churban Beis Hamikdash. Iron is connected with the destruction of the temple. Ki Barzel Mishulal, because iron was not allowed in the Holy Temple. Like it says, V'abayit behibanato, when it was born, Eben Shlema, it was built. The house of King Solomon's was built with Eben Shlema, with whole stones, makvos v'garzen, kol kli barzel lo nishma, but hammers or chisels or anything that was made of iron, lo nishma b'beit b'tibirato, was not heard in the Holy Temple when it was built. Even since sheshayach lechorban, because iron is an instrument of destruction, and with it was destroyed the temple. Kedeita b'midrash, like it says in the midrash, zot hatruma. This is the zav v'kesav and achoshet. The Jewish people had to take gold and silver and what's it? Not copper to build the Holy Temple. Although Barzel, but iron, ain kativ, it's not written. Ke kan lo b'mishkan, not in the tabernacle and not in the Holy Temple. Now, it wasn't the Jewish people were lacking iron. They had everything they needed. When they went out of Egypt, every Jew was wealthy. But God said, no, I don't want any iron. Lama, why? Shenimshal bo Edom. Shenimshal bo Edom. Because Edom, which is the non-Jews, which is Edom is also Rome, is all that afterwards it morphed into more the church. That Edom destroyed the Holy Temple, the second Holy Temple, and we are now in the exile of Edom, which is also called Galut Romi, the exile. And they destroyed the temple with iron. How are we going to fix this up? By iron of holiness, Barzel de Kedusha, holy iron. Maybe it's like what you said, Menachem, we'll see. It should be. Omer Razal, rabbi, said, call Talmud Chacham, any Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, she'eno kasha kabarzel, that's not hard like iron, is not a Talmud Chacham. Like it says, Eretz Asher Avanel Barzel. It says that the land, that its stones are iron. Al tikre Avanel, not its stones, Ella boneha, its sons, the Jewish people, the ones who learn Torah, they're called the sons of God. They demonstrate. Every Jew is called the son of God, but they demonstrate the fact that they're the sons of God. Shehu kasha orif, that the person who learns Torah has to be stubborn for good things. For good things. Right? Even if his life is in danger and they're trying to force him to eat not kosher food or whatever, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't make any difference what everybody does. Everybody's laughing at him and scoffing at him because he does what Torah mitzvahs are. I don't care. That's what's called stiff-necked people. When they make the mind up to do good, they'll do good. Nothing will stop them. That says a person who learns Torah should be like iron, a tokef, a chozek v'tokef, power and assertiveness, the etzem and Hashem of the essence of the soul. By means of this, mevatlim a barzel, this negates the barzel, the iron of the bad side. We remember we learned last week about Yehuda coming close to Yosef, that he was assertive, he had chutzpah. The Inyan Zeh, the Shaykh b'miyuchad, is especially to the 10th day of Tevis. Ki kavanas ha-metzar, the whole idea of laying siege, namely that it was only laid siege, the siege was put, and that he didn't touch Nebuchadnezzar did not even touch the wall of Jerusalem. He just laid siege. This was l'orer, to arouse the Jewish people to return to God, that also the walls of Jerusalem should remain complete. What does this mean for us to serving God? Hashmira al shlemos Torah, watching the completion of the Torah. Ani choma is the Torah. I am a wall. This is the Torah. Wolfen shel chozek v'tokef. This is a way of power and assertiveness. Barzel, iron of holiness. Avonah, it's stones. Boneh, namely it's builders. Talmud, it will be Barzel, will be strong, powerful. Right? There are some Jews that say, listen, we can, we don't have to be so strict, we can give up this. We have a microphone in the synagogue. What's the big deal? If you have a microphone, everybody can hear you. Instead of having a synagogue where you only have 100 people, you can have 1,000 people. And everyone hears. Instead of having a building that's a little building, we can take up a whole city block. And people come on Shabbat. You have to have a microphone. So he says, no, if you are a true Talmid Chacham, then you're going to be stubborn, stiff-necked, no microphone. We'll break the synagogue into 10 rooms. Each room will be a different rabbi. Okay, so I won't be the big guy standing on the talking to 10,000 people. I'll only talk to 200 people. And the other rooms will be also 200 people. We'll have 5 rooms with 200 people. And that's 1,000 people, right? Well, somehow or other we'll fix it up. We'll work it up. Maybe we'll change the acoustics in the room to do this. But microphone we're not bringing in, right? Yeah, a person sometimes has to be, how do you say, stiff-necked. What about the mechitza between the women and the men, right? The men and the women, there's supposed to be a partition, at least, that the men don't see the women. According to halacha, it can be 10 tefachim, which means about like a little bit more than a yard and a half. Everybody sees everybody else. Well, no problem. I was in one synagogue. Anyway, the women were up high. So they were like elevated up. So they had the wall, but you could see it. Anyway. So there's all sorts of, if a person starts to give in a little bit, how do they say, people and rivers become crooked by following the path of least resistance. A river goes and meets a rock, so it goes around it. It becomes crooked. If it wasn't that, the river, if it didn't pay attention to the obstacles, the river would go straight. Same thing with people. People, they would go straight. They know you have to be honest. They say honesty is the best policy. Sometimes you go straight and you hit something, and all of a sudden, hey, I'll go around, I'll make a deal, I'll do this. That's called Barzel. A person, a Jew, has to be, in good things, has to be stubborn. In a pleasant way, in a nice way, but stubborn. Avram says, that's going to be the eternity, even though even more the intention. Is that what we got up to? Yeah, the intention, the tachlis, and the purpose, of these terrible things that began with Nebuchadnezzar laying siege on Pulas Barzel, that they destroyed the temple. Eventually, they destroyed the temple. The only reason that there was such a thing as Barzel, iron, destroying the temple, is in order that there will be an improvement on the first and second temple, something better than the first temple, something better than the second temple, the third temple. So it ended up that the destruction of the temple by means of iron, in the end, will come out to be something really good, which is building iron, the third temple, which I have absolutely no idea how this will be, because tremendous numbers of people were killed. Jews were killed in the first, second temple. And we've been in exile 2,000 years with suffering and terrible. How the third temple is going to make up for this? It's going to be a good surprise. God has a big job ahead of him. The Ita Midrash, it says in the Midrash that Zav, the Kesef and Nechoshet, that gold and silver and copper, Nechoshet is copper, right? Yeah. Copper, Haim, they are Keneged, corresponding to, what is the other one that you sometimes think it is? Not copper. Anyway, the gold and silver and copper, this corresponds to 3 fathers, Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. One second, there's another way they translate Barzel also. And Barzel, I'm sure that I'm Nechoshet. Nechoshet, I am sure that Nechoshet is translated as, give me one second. as copper. 1 second. There's another thing that they translated to, but it's wrong. 1 second. Please give me 1 minute. 1 minute. Who here? I just don't want to make the same mistake. That's right. See, copper and brass. They cop it as brass, but it's not brass. It's not brass. Brass, I think, is a mixture of iron and something else. It's not brass. It's copper. The translation of Nechoshet is copper. Okay. Zav, it says, okay, so it says Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It says Zav, gold. Now, the three elements, the three types of metals that were used in the Holy Temple were gold, silver, and copper. There's a midrash that says that gold corresponds to Abraham. Kesef, silver, that corresponds to Yitzchak. And copper, that corresponds to Jacob. Alpia Yadua, like it's known, Shagam, Bechinas Mikdashot, Hem Keneged Avram, the three temples are also corresponding to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Abraham is the first temple that Abraham is called the Holy Temple. That it says that Abraham saw the mountain, right? The mountain where Abraham brought up Yitzchak to sacrifice. That was the mountain in Jerusalem where the Holy Temple was built, right? With the altar that Abraham built to sacrifice Yitzchak, that was the same place where the altar was in the Holy Temple. Yitzchak, he said he went out to pray in the field. That was when he met Rivka. Says the Sada, in that place where he met Rivka, that was also the Holy Temple. He called it a Sada. But Yaakov, he said, he called it a house. Zeh Beit Elokim. He called it a house. Yeshlom, we can say that Zav, Kesef, and Nechoshet, that gold and silver and copper, they correspond to the three holy temples. Gold, this corresponds to the first temple. Silver is the second temple. And copper corresponds to the third temple. What type of logic is there in this? Is there any understanding? Why? Al Yadei, that by means of Yaakov, Jacob, that his whole thing is Torah. Like we said before, that is made a birur. This is refining even the lowest, the least valuable of these three metals, which is copper. Milashan Nachash. Nechoshet also has inside of it copper. Nechoshet also has inside of the word for a snake, serpent. Nachash HaKadmon, the first serpent that tricked Chava, tricked Eve, right? Shuanya klippa, this is the idea of klippa, of bad, that covers over God, a shell. Shebiruro, how do we refine this bad of the world, the shell that conceals God? This Nachash, the snake, by means of the Nechoshet, which is in the Holy Temple. She'ikro, that the main thing is of the third temple, this is by Yaakov, that he was the completion of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and by the third temple, that this corresponds to Jacob. Copper. The Yesh Lahosef, and we can also add on, Shea, Nechoshet, that copper, Romas, also hints on Hamad V'Matzav, the Zman Galut. Copper also is hinting at the time of exile. Here we said that's copper is hinting at, we said the third temple, that's Jacob. But we can look at it in another way. That copper is hinting at the least valuable of all the metals. That's the Jewish people when they're in a time of exile, after the second temple was destroyed. But the Shlemus, we can say that the real completion of the third temple is not so much hinted at by copper. Copper, that's mainly hinting at the time of exile. But it's hinting at, the third temple is hinted at by iron. Shalamata, this is even below copper. Gold, silver, and copper, those are sort of precious stones. Iron is not a precious stone at all. It's not a precious stone at all. Right? They have currency is made, I think in America even, right? The currency. There's the gold standard. It used to be that there were gold coins, not anymore. And there was silver, but there's also copper. The pennies are copper. But iron, there's no currency, at least in America. I don't know currency. I mean, I'm not an expert in this thing, but usually you don't make currency out of iron. Iron is too cheap. They said that by means of this, we come to refining iron, which is the lowest. That's almost impossible. That's the third temple. That's the completion of refining the world. Zav, kesef, silver and gold and copper, they are from above to below. Shezav, the gold, is more important, more valuable. Silver is a little bit below. Copper is even below that. And this is hinted at the first letters, the initials, Zav, Kesef, and Achoshet. So this is hinted at. If you look, the Rebbe brings a whole series of sources for this. We're gonna say in a moment sources for this, and we'll look and see the sources in a moment. But it says Zion, Chaf, and Nun. But even more, all the letters Zion, Hey, Beit. This is the first letters of Zeh Hanotein Bari, like three different types of charity. Giving charity, this one gives charity when he is healthy. That's the best type of charity to give. You're in a good mood, you're happy, and you give charity. Kesef is a little bit lower. This is Kishiyesh Sachanat Pachad. When there is a danger that is fearful. When you're fearful, so that you're worried about something happening, you give charity. Right? I'm giving charity so that I won't get sick. I'm giving charity. Someone's going into the army, you give charity so that people. It's also giving charity, but that's giving charity with sort of half-heartedly. You'd rather not. But on the other hand, it'll protect me. So that's because Nechoshet, this is Netinat Chole She'omer Ton. This is after a person there already is danger, and a person is giving charity to get out of the danger. That's hinted at by Nechoshet. Netinat Chole, the giving of a sick person, that he says give. So three types of charity. One type of charity is giving when you're totally healthy. One is when there's an impending danger, to avoid it. And the third one is to remove the danger that already arrived. That's gold, silver, represented by gold, silver, and copper.
Pidyon Nefesh.
Mora, huh?
Like a Pidyon Nefesh, they use different coins.
Mora, this indicates on the Mishkan, on the, this also indicates on these three levels are on the Mishkan, the tabernacle, that's like gold. Beit Rishon, the first temple, that's silver. When it was complete, Zenoten Bari, and Kesef, which is Bayit Sheni, and I'm sorry, the tabernacle and the first temple, that's gold. That's God gave it to us when everything was wonderful, good, in a good mood, was God is in a good mood. That's gold. The second temple, that's represented by silver. This is already like in repentance for what they did, the sins that they did that caused the first temple to be destroyed. And this is already like a second level. It's a little bit lower. Therefore, the second temple was not as valuable as the first one. It was missing 5 things. The tablets weren't there in the Holy of Holies, etc. Looking there, it says the second is pachad, because maybe there'll be another time in this temple and it'll be destroyed, which in fact that's what happened. And Nechoshet, copper, this is hinting at the situation of the Jewish people in time of exile. Because of what was lacking in the holy temple, the Jewish people were in the situation of being sick. this is the request of God that he should give kol noten b'ayin yofen noten at the Beit HaMikdash Shlishi, the third temple, that will be ultimate completion. Okay, so what do we have? The Rebbe wants to say that there's 4 levels. There's gold, silver, copper, and iron. Gold is the tabernacle and the first temple. Silver is talking about the second temple. Copper is the time of exile. And iron is the elevation of the exile. That's iron. That's the third temple. That's the third temple. That's why the third temple is going to be eternal. See, that's going to be the completion. Mikdash Hashem Konan. God is going to build a third temple. It's going to be a building that God is going to build, and therefore it will be eternal, that there won't be able to destroy it. In other words, if we can use iron to build the third temple, that means that all the powers of destruction don't exist. They've been used for building. Yeshlamur can say that this whole quality of being eternal of the third temple, which is after the destruction of the first temple and the second temple, there will be built a third temple which is eternal, that can't be destroyed. This is hinted at by not gold, not silver, not copper, but iron on a holy side of iron. Iron, which could not be used to build the tabernacle or the first 2 temples. It will be the element of the third temple, as we will talk about tomorrow. What does this mean according to Kabbalah and to Hasidut? Let us continue. I just maybe lived through the first letters. Here we go. That Barzel, the first letters of Bilha. Bilha, that was the what Yaakov had 4 wives. Rachel and Leah were the main ones, but Rachel took with her a handmaid and gave her to Yaakov. That was Bilha. And Leah took with her a handmaid called Zilpah. So that's were 4 wives of Jacob, and they gave birth to the 12 tribes. And this hints at Bilhah, Rachel, Zilpah, and Leah, the 4 wives of Jacob, that they were the wives and the mothers of the 12 tribes. And corresponding to them is also Bad, which we'll talk about, God willing, tomorrow. Okay, let's stop this. We'll go 1 second to do the Yom Yom question. 1 minute.